Today we're going to focus on hips. And if your experience is anything like mine, I've been doing a lot of sitting and a lot of being on the computer and not really moving around a whole lot. And so when we do that, we sort of shorten the distance in between like our hips and the tops of our legs, like our hip flexor area. So we'll do some stretching for that particular area of the body. And then we'll also just do some really nice hip stretches as well. So I think that will feel really good, I hope. We're going to start laying down on our back. So I was sitting on a block, but you don't need any props or anything. We're going to start in Supta Baddha Konasana. So the bottoms of the feet together and our knees falling open to the side. And so you might notice that this already starts to bring a little bit of stretch kind of to the inner part of the legs. And if that's the case and it's not comfortable, you could always walk the knees in a little bit so that the bottoms of your feet are kind of on the ground, but your knees are also going out a little to the side. So you can always make any sort of modifications that you need here. And you can have your arms down at your sides, or we'll practice a breath that might be nice to have one hand on the heart and one hand on the belly. So you can just start wherever feels comfortable for you. You can allow the eyes to be closed here if that feels good. And just sort of feel what naturally is happening with the breath as it rises and falls. Maybe you're feeling it sort of rising up into your hands and then dropping back down. Or if your hands aren't on your chest, you might just feel the way that the belly and the chest lift and lower. And as always, if there's a reason that focusing on this breath is really hard, you can invite yourself to just allow that to come a little bit more into the background of your focus, almost like you're letting it turn into like a foggy picture. So maybe if that's something that already happened today or something that's happening later, see if you can let that to become sort of a little bit more foggy, a little bit out of focus, and let your breath become more in focus. And so we're not blocking it out, we're not letting anything sort of be forgotten necessarily, but it's just coming out of focus a little bit as you allow the breath to become a little bit sharper and more in focus. And then we'll add a 3-part breath. If you'd like to stay with just your natural breath, you can do that. Or as we inhale, we'll inhale into the belly, the ribs, and the chest. And then as we exhale, we'll exhale out the chest and then the ribs and then the belly. So inhaling belly, ribs, chest. Exhale, chest, ribs, belly. Follow this at your own pace. Maybe you feel the breath flowing because you have your hands on your body, or maybe you just sort of visualize it as it passes through each area. And then reverses as you exhale. We'll flow with this for another round or two. And then when you feel complete, you can just return back to your natural breath, whatever feels good for an inhale and an exhale here. And if you'd like to have music for today and you haven't already started your music, you can go ahead and do that. I'll drop the playlist into the chat one more time. And then we'll just take our hands down so that they come to the outside of our legs. And then we'll just sort of press the knees in towards one another, just with a little bit of help from our hands. And then we're going to just drop both knees over to the right side as we exhale. And then we'll inhale back up through center and then drop both knees over to the left side as we exhale. So we're kind of doing a little bit of a flow here. So inhaling to bring the knees back up and exhaling to drop them down. Take the full breath and inhale to come up and exhale to drop down. Let's do this one more time on each side. And then we can again come back into neutral here. We're going to rock up and down on our back. And if that's not good for you, you could always just roll to one side and then lift up. We're just going to start to give ourselves just gentle, we're not trying to get crazy here, but just rock up and down, give our spine a little bit of a massage. And then when you're ready, we'll just kind of flip over our feet and make our way into tabletop. And so from tabletop, let's start by taking hip circles. So we're just going to kind of ease into it. So we'll shift our hips side to side. So we're just going all the way to the left, all the way to the right. And then we can start to add some circles in here. So the next time you go all the way over to the right, let's then drop the hips down towards the heels. We come up, shifting the hips all the way over to the left. And then maybe we come forward a little. And then again, so we're taking really big circles. We go all the way over to one side, back down to the heels, come up and shift over. And then maybe come into like a little bit of a cobra or an upward facing dog there at the front. And then next time you come forward, just switch to the other direction. So go over to the left first. Bring the hips all the way back down by the heels, taking super big circles here. And so sometimes, in yoga, when we think about, oh, this is going to be a class that's focused on hips, we think about it's going to be a class that's all focused on stretching and opening the hips. But also it's important to think about mobility and movement in that particular area of the body, whether it's a joint or a muscle. So here we have some movement. Next time we'll come forward, we can pause here. Maybe you allow your hips to drop a little closer to the floor. Coming into a little bit of a cobra. If this is too much, we can always lower down with our elbows bent. Breathe into that stretch here, a little bit of kind of passive opening for the fronts of the hips. And let's draw some strength into our core. So belly button draws into the spine, and that will help us lift our way back up into tabletop. Pause there for just a moment in neutral, and then we'll tuck the toes, lift the hips, and come up into our first downward facing dog. So take your time to kind of pedal through the feet. Just notice what the sensation feels like as you bring yourself into this shape. Thinking about length in our spine here. I think oftentimes we think of our downward facing dog as being all about the legs, all about stretch and length in the legs. But actually, I'd invite you to take the stretch out of the legs for a moment just to feel how it really lengthens the spine, lengthens the back. And then maybe if you can keep that same length in the spine, you then straighten out through the knees, through the legs, and add that piece on. Coming back to the breath here. And then on an inhale, let's take little steps again. We can get that nice deep bend in the knees to bring our feet up towards our hands. We'll let our head be heavy. And then one vertebra at a time, we'll roll ourselves all the way up so that we come to standing. We can roll the shoulders back. Mountain pose. Let's just rock forward a little bit onto our tiptoes and rock backward a little onto our heels. And then just kind of settle in on a place that feels right there in the center. And then we'll make our way through a couple sun salutations to get a little bit warmer. So on an inhale, let's reach the arms up overhead. Exhale, we dive forward. Inhale, halfway lift. So draw the fingertips up the shins. Exhale, plant the hands. Let's step all the way back into plank. And then once you arrive, you could lower knees, chest, chin, or if you're familiar with chaturanga, we'll come into another back bend here. And then again, draw the belly strong as we lift ourselves back up into downward facing dog. And so you could flow through your tabletop. You could press right up into plank. Kind of depends on what you're looking to add into your practice today. Pausing here in down dog. And then on an inhale again, let's have a little bend to the knees, or maybe a big bend to the knees as we walk the feet towards the hands. Exhale, let the head hang heavy. At this time, let's reverse swan dive. So kind of powerful reverse lift all the way up to extended mountain, and then join the hands here, mountain pose. And we begin again. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale, halfway lift. Match the length of the breath and the length of the movement. Plant the hands and step back, plank. And then you make your way down into your chaturanga, or maybe knees, chest, chin. Find your back bend, peel open through the collarbones, and then strong in the core as we come back to downward facing dog. And as you're ready, again, a little bend in the knees. Inhale. Maybe you want to take little steps, or right, maybe you're ready to hop the feet towards the hands. Fold forward over the legs, and then reverse swan dive all the way back up, mountain pose. One more time, sun salutation A. Ride that flow of your own breath. Maybe it's faster than me, maybe it's slower than me, doesn't matter. Taking your own choices of how you flow through your sun salutation. And we meet in down dog. From here on an inhale, let's bring our right leg high. We'll bring the right foot up towards the hands. You can always use the right hand to kind of help you bring it up there. We're going to drop the back knee, come into a bit of a hold here. We can keep the toes tucked or have them untucked. That's your choice. And again, you have a choice. You could have your hands on the top of your leg, or you could have your hands on the floor. Idea here being that we feel a bit of opening in the front of our left hip and the top of our left leg. So you might notice that dropping way deeply down allows you to feel that, or maybe lifting a little bit up higher and giving a little tilt to the pelvis makes you feel it more deeply. You could try both and then decide which one you like best. Option also to have the arms up. And so this will be one of the big counter poses to all that sitting that we're doing. Stretching the hip flexors in the opposite way. Let's take 2 more breaths here. And if you have your hands lifted or up on your knee, you can drop them back down. And then you take your choice. Do you want to flow through your plank and your back bend, or do you want to lift right back up into down dog? And you can make those choices by deciding, do I want to add more heat and warmth into my practice, or do I not want to? And then you can just come back to down dog. And we'll find that on the other side. So inhale with control, we lift the right leg high, or excuse me, the left leg high, my bad. And then the left foot will step up towards the hands. Again, you can use your hand to kind of help get it up there. We'll drop the back knee. You can keep the toes tucked or flatten them. And then take a little bit of time. Take some breaths to decide, how do you want to explore this pose? Are you dropping your hips really low down? Are you being a little bit higher? All depends on the structure of your own body and also the way that you're experiencing it today. Once we settle into our pose, most everything becomes sort of that fogginess other than the breath. So the idea of what someone else is doing becomes very foggy. The idea of what you did last time is not a part of the picture. It's all about the breath. Again, we'll take one more inhale. We can plant the hands down, take our choice if we want to flow through plank and chaturanga, or if we want to come right back into downward facing dog. And we'll all meet in down dog. Inhale, let's bend slightly through the knees. We'll come to ragdoll at the top of the mat. So you can take any hand variation that you like. Maybe your hands are on the floor or on your shins. Let the head hang heavy if that feels comfortable. And start to settle into ragdoll. So feeling a little bit of a stretch in the backs of the legs. And then one vertebra at a time. Let's go ahead and lift ourselves all the way up. See how slowly we can go. We're going to explore some more movements in the hips. So we're going to stay standing for this next little bit. Let's root down our left foot into the floor. We'll draw our right knee up into our chest, and we're just going to kind of hold on to it for a second. And I say into your chest, it doesn't have to be into your chest. It's really just kind of lifted up. And we'll just kind of gather this balance for a moment here. And then if you can, we can let go of the knee here. And let's start by drawing some circles with our hip. So this is our left hip, just drawing some circles. Doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to look the way mine looks. Just bringing some movement, some mobility into the hip joint. And if you're going with this circle, the next time, let's see if we can just go kind of forward and back. So just moving in a different plane. So I've got my knee coming all the way forward, all the way back, thinking mostly about our hip. It's not about bringing our back into it so that we can get as big of a movement as possible. We want to just be under control here. And then we'll come back up through center. Let's bring ourselves into tree pose. So we root down through our left leg. We want to think about not sort of dumping our weight down into that left hip, but trying to stay lifted here. Slight turn out of our right hip, and then take an arm variation. That feels good for you here. You can find a point of focus that's not moving. That might help you with balance a little bit, but know that if you're wiggling all over the place or if you need to put your hand on the wall, that's okay. Let's take one more inhale. And then with control, we're going to come back to that neutral position with our knee up, and then go ahead and join the feet next to each other. Take a little bit of like a kind of rinse out of that side, just bringing hips one side to the other. And then we'll find that on the other side. So we'll root down through the right leg, draw the left knee up. We can just kind of get our bearings here with our other leg rooted down into the earth. And then if it's accessible for us, we'll let go of our hands. And then we'll take some circles here. So the circles may look or feel different on this side. That's okay. Bringing some lubrication into the joints as we roll around in these circles, thinking all about the hip joint. The rest of the body isn't involved, isn't really helping. Doesn't have to be the biggest circle you've ever drawn. And then the next time we can bring the knee forward and then bring the knee back. So take those nice kind of swings forward and back, using control, of course. And then the next time you come forward, go ahead and come forward and turn that left knee and hip out to the side. And here we are in tree pose on the other side. Staying really tall and lifted through this hip so we don't sink down into the hip, but we stay strong in that right glute especially. And pause. Let's take one more inhale. Exhale. And then again, with control, we'll bring the left knee back in towards center, and then we can drop it down. Both feet on the floor. Again, maybe you rock forward and back or kind of go side to side with your hips. And then we'll flow and make our way back into downward facing dog. So you have the choice. Do you want to plant the hands and step the feet right back into down dog? Or maybe you're flowing through a vinyasa of some sort, maybe coming through chaturanga. Tons of options. As we're ready on an inhale, let's lift the right leg. Take the full inhale breath to lift the right leg. And then we'll bring the right foot up towards the hands. This time we'll set up for a high lunge. So we'll keep the back knee up off the floor. If you'd prefer to take a low lunge, you can always drop the back knee to the floor. And we'll inhale and lift up. Here we are in our high lunge. Back heel is lifted. Nice deep bend in the front knee. Again, we feel that opening in the hip flexor here. One more nice big inhale. And then we'll exhale, open up into our warrior two. So right toes stay towards the front, but left toes turn towards the side of the mat here. Powerful warrior here. And we're going to start to transition ourselves to a pose that I call ninja. So I'm going to take my hands out of the equation here, turn my toes so that they come kind of like at a 45-degree angle. So they're pointing towards the top left corner of my mat. And then I'm starting to sit myself down. My toes might turn a little more towards the front. And I drop myself down into this kind of long extended left leg and deep bend in the right knee. Now, yours might be higher, and that's absolutely fine. Or maybe you're dropped down so that your hips are a little bit closer to the floor. You can have your hands wherever is comfortable, or maybe your hands are lifted. And we breathe. Can you relax the hips? So can you, if you notice that you're really tensing and kind of squeezing the hips, can you try to let them relax, kind of melt them down a little bit? Now I'm going to walk my hands and my right foot more around towards the front of the mat. So now we're in a low lunge. Hands are on the floor. You can keep the the back knee lifted, or you can drop it down, and then we'll open up into a revolved lunge. Breathe here. One more inhale. Let's bring the top hand down so it comes back down to the floor. We'll drop the back knee if it's not there already, and then let's shift the hips back into our half split. So your variation of a half split may look different. You may be more like sitting all the way down, and that's an option. Or I like to be a little bit more lifted. And if full split is a part of your practice, you certainly could come into full split now. Being guided by the breath here. And then on an inhale, we can again walk the hands forward. Let's bring the right hand to the inside of the right foot. And let's just explore lizard pose here. So let's keep our right knee hugging in to our right upper arm. So our right knee isn't sort of dropping out to the side. We're hugging it in. And you could choose to lower down to your forearms if that's something you'd like to do. And if you have sensitive knee, or you just want to try what this feels like with the back knee lifted, that's also an option for our lizard pose. For me, I tend to notice that when I have my back knee lifted, my back toes tucked, I feel a little bit more of a sensation in my hip. So I like that option when I'm thinking about focusing on my hips. We'll take one more breath. And if you haven't already tucked the back toes and lifted the back knee, you can do that now. We can keep the hands just as they are, and we'll just swing the right leg around to meet the left. And here we are in plank. And then your choice, flow through your vinyasa or come back up into your downward facing dog. We'll meet in down dog. We'll stay in down dog about 5 breaths to sort of reset. And if there's a different resetting pose that feels good for you, like child's pose or something else, you can feel free to do that. If you've chosen to take child's pose, you can lift yourself up as you're ready. And we'll find that on the other side. So on an inhale, we lift the left leg high, and the left foot steps up to the hands, and we set ourselves up for a high lunge. Take as long as you need to get there. Arms can always be lifted up and tall, or maybe you're choosing cactus arms or a different arm variation. Let the flow of breath be what's in the center of your focus here. Let's take another inhale, and then we can open up into our warrior two. Notice what happens if you shift your hips more towards the left, more towards the right, to the front, to the back. Where feels kind of like a central, kind of a strong place to work from, but also where does it feel the most supportive to hip sensation? So if your hips are kind of back, does that feel like a little icky on your hips? Maybe bring them forward a little bit. Just kind of play around with that. And we'll start to make our transition into our ninja pose. So I'm going to turn my left toes sort of up towards the top corner of my mat. At the same time, start to drop down, depending on, again, your own skeleton and your own body. You may be lifted up higher, your right toes may be pointed up towards the sky. You might have any different variation here. Hands could be lifted, hands could be down. And then we'll start to transition ourselves to our lunge on the other side. So we can bring our hands down to kind of frame the front foot transition so that we're back up on the ball of the back foot and with the left toes pointed forward. And then we can find our way into our revolved lunge where we lift our left arm towards the sky and find that twist in the spine. Notice here in the body, where are you finding strength and where are you finding softness? So if you feel like there's nowhere in your whole body that you're finding strength, can you fire up maybe the muscles of the legs a little bit, maybe in the upper back and shoulders? And if there's nowhere in the body that you're feeling softness, can you find softness in the muscles of the face? Maybe in the joints and the muscles of the fingers and the hand. Let's take one more inhale. As we exhale, we'll come back to neutral. We'll drop the back knee and then we shift back into our half split, whatever variation you prefer. Really big active flex of the left foot, left toes can help bring the stretch a little bit deeper into the calf. And on an inhale, we'll walk our hands forward. Again, bend into the front knee. Left hand will come to the inside of the left foot. We'll keep the left knee and the left lower leg sort of hugging into the upper part of the left arm. And here we are in lizard pose. Option to have the back toes tucked or the back toes untucked and the knee drop to the floor. One more inhale here. Exhale. And we'll come back, or we'll all come up so that we have our toes tucked in the back, knee long and extended. And then we'll just shift our way around so that we come back to downward facing dog. Final chance here for a vinyasa. If you'd like to take one more pass through your own vinyasa here. And then we'll all come up to downward facing dog. And on an inhale, let's lift the right leg high. And we'll bring the right knee towards the right wrist as we make our way into pigeon pose. So always having the option to lay on your back and do figure four. So that would look like crossing the right ankle over the top of the left knee while laying on your back. It's a great variation to pigeon. And if you're in pigeon pose, maybe we shift the hips side to side a little bit, perhaps dropping our left hip a little bit more towards our right heel so that we're not rolled off to the right side. We're a little bit more even in the hips. And then you can take whatever arm variation or upper body variation works for you here in pigeon pose. And maybe you notice that you connect with the breath in a little bit of a different way as we hold some of these poses for a little bit longer, which might mean that your breath becomes a little bit longer, a little bit deeper, slower. And let's take 5 more breaths here. And then if you've lowered down, we can start to shift our way up so that we have our hands on the mat. Again, we'll tuck the back toes. Let's draw some strength in the core and in the glutes to sort of lift ourselves up off the mat, and then we'll step back into down dog. Once you arrive in down dog, can you tune into what would feel good in the body? So maybe that's a little bit of a counter stretch, maybe a counter movement, counter pose like child's pose. No right or wrong. And then on an inhale, we'll bring the left leg high. Left knee will come towards left wrist. If we're laying on our back in our figure four stretch, you can just switch to the other side. And again, here, maybe we want to shift our hips a little more left and right, and then kind of air towards dropping the front of the right hip more towards the left heel so that we're not rolling off to the left side. And then maybe we lower down, or maybe we stay lifted for our pigeon pose. We'll take 5 more breaths here. And as you're ready, we can start to lift up if our hands are not already on the mat. We'll tuck the back toes, draw strength in through the core, the hips, the glutes to lift our way up, to unweight the left foot and then step it back. Again, taking any movements that we might like here. And then when you're ready, we'll drop down onto our shins. Let's keep our toes tucked. We're just gonna sit back onto the shins. We won't be here for too long. So we've got our toes tucked under, so that's gonna be a challenge, kind of a stretch for the bottom of the feet. And we're gonna take our hands, kind of bring them to our heels, and then just lift our hips forward here. So we're gonna come into a variation of a camel pose. So we're thinking more about driving our hips forward as opposed to a big arch in our upper back, because we want to open our hip flexors here. Again, sort of the opposite of our seated posture. You can absolutely be lower than this. Take another breath or two here. And then the next time you exhale, go ahead and bring your hips back down towards your heels. And then we can shift ourselves around so that we come all the way to seated. Nice job. We'll extend the legs long in front of us here. Come into a seated twist. So we'll have our legs long. I'm gonna draw my right knee into my chest and then cross my right leg over. Let's keep our left leg long. Sit up nice and tall and then twist towards the right side. So bring my right hand towards the back of my space. It's kind of like in little tent fingers so that I can put my hand on the ground. And then gaze is wherever is comfortable. Maybe even kind of extending the twist by bringing our left hand and elbow sort of to kind of the top of our right knee. Inhale maybe allows us to grow taller. Exhale. And then we'll inhale to come back through center. We'll uncross the leg and then switch to the other side. So now I'm drawing my left leg in, right leg is staying long. We'll sit up nice and tall. Maybe we kind of roll the shoulders back a little and then twist towards the left side. Take a couple moments to settle in. Maybe your variation, wherever your arm is or what your head is doing is slightly different on this side because the two sides of the body are different. Let's take another inhale here. Exhale. And then inhale, we'll come back to center. We can uncross the legs. We'll bring the bottoms of the feet together and just drape ourselves forward a little bit. So we can just sort of curl our shoulders forward, let our head be heavy. And then on an inhale, we'll lift our way up and come all the way down onto our back into our Shavasana. So you have maybe 5 breaths, 10 breaths. If there's any final poses that you'd like to do, you can do those now. Maybe you want to do another twist or you want to do a bridge or some kind of an inversion. Your choice here for these final 5 breaths. And then when you're ready to come into Shavasana, you could lay all the way down on your back, or maybe you choose to lay on your side or your belly. Allow the breath to just come back naturally. Feeling the breath flowing evenly in the nose and out the nose. Nothing left to do. Just be exactly as you are right here in this moment. And very gently starting to bring your awareness back into your space, noticing the way that you're oriented on your mat or whatever surface you're laying on. And then starting to draw small movements into the body. Maybe at first you don't even move at all, but thinking about moving fingers and toes until you start finding little wiggles, gently turning head left and right. And then, in whatever way makes sense for you, making your way into seed pose, rolling to one side or the other. And pausing in seed pose to offer a moment of gratitude for whatever you are grateful for today. And then, when you're ready, you can start to make your way up to a comfortable seat. And finding a closing gesture with your hands, maybe laying your hands on the tops of your legs or bringing your hands to heart center. Gentle tuck to the chin to bow to your internal teacher. And we'll take a breath together to close our practice so we can exhale first. Nice big inhale. Big open mouth exhale. And thank you so much for choosing to spend part of your day with me and with yourself on your mat. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll hope to see you again soon.